think with that, we will start. So hi, and welcome to this online LINX panel discussion. My name is Nurani Nimpuno, and I'm Head of Global Engagement at LINX. Thank you all for joining us this Monday morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. As the current situation has seen all of the LINX in-person events and really all of the industry events cancelled or postponed, so LINX is trying to move as many of these events online. So that's including a member meeting, trainings, but also interactive panel discussions like this. So keep an eye on our virtual panel events page to find out more information and access the relevant registration pages. So just a little bit of housekeeping for the session. I see already there have been a few people commenting in the chat. That's great to see. If you'd like to ask any questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of this webinar. We have some great LINX staff support here with us today, and they will monitor the Q&A, and we'll get to the questions at the end. And also, if you'd like to see us do more online events or training courses or panel discussions, if you have any ideas about topics or even presenters, send us an email at marketing@linx, and we will look into that and see what we can organize. So thank you very much for that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our excellent panel today. We're very lucky to have such a great lineup of IXP experts. So allow me to introduce Maurizio Goretti from Namex, the CEO of Namex, Bijal Sangani from LINX, Takanori Furishio from JPIX, and Curtis Lindqvist from LINX. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good to have you here, and thank you all for being here today.
Hello, everyone.
So as this is, sorry, please. So as this is a panel discussion, we hope to make an interactive one. Please feel free to ask questions. And I would also recommend that you go to the top of your Zoom page and go to viewing options and select gallery view. That way you can see all the panelists all the time. And whenever someone wants to jump in, you can see them reacting to each other and getting ready to jump in. Okay. So thanks again. And I think without further ado, we'll simply jump into the questions that we have today. So this discussion is really about COVID-19 and how the internet and how the IXPs have coped in managing that challenge. And we thought it would be interesting to have this setup of panelists with us today, because apart from you being experts in your field, you're also from different countries, from different regions. And we thought it would be interesting to hear the different perspectives from how you have managed the challenges, but also really where you are in the trajectory of this pandemic. So to kick this off, could I ask you to start with giving a quick overview of what the situation is in your country at the moment and how far into the pandemic you are? And I'll just preface that by saying Bijal is here from the LINX, and she doesn't work for an IXP, but she's here to give the perspective of many of the other IXPs in the region. So please go ahead. Could I ask you, Maurizio, perhaps to start?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, here in Italy, we are at the beginning of what the government called the phase 2. We were in lockdown starting from, we have been in lockdown from March the 10th. And then the lockdown, this was the phase that we call phase 1. And then at May the 4th, the government started this phase 2. That means start to reopening something very carefully, trying to check the numbers to see how the things was going on. The things now here, it's much better than before. As you know, we are one of the most heated countries in all the world, but luckily in this moment things are going better, and the curve goes down. And but yeah, so May the 4th we started to reopen something. Today is a special day because it's another step of this phase 2, and the hair cutter reopened, so I have to go there because as you see and something like that. From today we can walk around the region. Is not allowed yet to move from one region to another. Then the government say that we will do that if numbers are good. I think that we passed the bad period, and now we hope for the future.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Maurizio. And your hair is impeccable, of course, as always. Maybe Bijal can give a bit of an overview of some of the different European IXPs. And you're on mute, so please unmute. Thank you.
Well, I'm based in the UK, in London, and the situation here is that we're slowly, I say very slowly, coming out of the lockdown, in that you know, we're still supposed to be people that can work from home are still meant to be working from home, I guess essential shops are opening. Our hairdressers I don't think are open yet, but just the supermarkets, you are now allowed to go out of your house more than once a day. So yeah, when I say slow, it's all happening quite slow here. But I think that's a good thing. I think we do need to move with caution. In other parts of Europe, they, from my understanding, they are also starting to very slowly to open up, like Maurizio said, and I think you know, each place is at a different stage, but just to start to get things going, I think you know, I think it's important that we don't know what's going to happen when things do open up and how things are going to change, if the virus is going to you know, if we're going to have a second wave, or you know, there's still so many unknowns. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Curtis, obviously we are based in London as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or.
No, I can't wait for hairdressers to open. No, but no, I think from lockdown, well, from LINX perspective, we have been working from home for almost 3 months from all essential, well, all staff, and we have been limited to any movements to just the most critical visits we would have to do to data centers, which have been luckily very, very few. But yeah, we have been remaining lockdown for this entire period. We were fortunate enough to be able to pre-provision, pre-cable as much as we could as lockdown started. So we have really managed to keep visits by all staff to the minimum to the data centers.
Thank you. And Takanori-san, would you care to give an overview of the situation in Japan?
Oh, okay. Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you very much. First of all, in Japan, it's a little bit different of the UK and other European countries. We are not so strong to, how to say, law, like more volunteer basis. And government say, do not go to outside if you can. So means it's not lockdown. It is starting March 26. Government say state of emergency. So every prefectures going to more strong to do not go to outside. Even everybody say trying to be working at home, and school going to closing end of March. But still we can go out. Easy to go to shopping and go to restaurant, but human, how do you say, we can go, but everybody trying to do not go. So means it's not so strong, strict law. Still, we can go data center, we can go another, office, but including do not go to another state. Like if I go to Osaka, no, do not go. That company say, do not go to business trip in the domestic too. So its situation is different than another country, but we trying to be more saving life and staying home volunteer basis. And now getting well right now. That's the situation right now.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, what would you say were the very first effects you noticed of the COVID-19 pandemic? I think, Maurizio, you were first hit by this, and it sort of rolled over Europe after that.
Yeah, we were hit as first in Europe, and this all started at the beginning of February. It was really fast. All of a sudden, it happens, and as everybody, also in the other part of the world, at the beginning you don't believe that it's going to happen. No? Everybody say, okay, it's fine, it's something that we can manage, and all of a sudden happens. Really, you realize that it's going to be a very big hit. We always use the sentence, it's like a war, and it's like a war in some way. It's really hard to imagine it. Well, at first, the COVID problems hit Italy in the north. We closed in Rome our office on March the 10th, but our colleagues from MIX in Milan, that was the most hit region, closed their, or at least limited their service, the possibility to enter into the center, get some precaution 2 weeks before than us. And what's happening is that...
Oh, please.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say also that because you were one of the very first countries hit, I think the rest of, at least the IXPs in Europe, we had the luxury of actually learning from what you went through, because you shared that very early on. And I know some of that was through the LINX organized weekly community meetings. Maybe Bijal, do you want to say a few things about that and how that came about? And if you want to add something then, Maurizio, please feel free.
So, I think, I mean, we started to hear about the virus. Actually, I think even during the LINX meeting, which I'm really glad I attended, because that was the last time we got to actually see everyone. I think, and that was back in February, and we started to, hear that people were stopping traveling around then. But it wasn't until, I guess, at the beginning of March when we started to realize that actually this is something that's going to be really serious. And we started to think about the LINX forum and, as everyone else is doing with events, do we go ahead? What are the risk factors? At that time, we didn't know how bad it was going to be, but the board made the decision to postpone the event initially. But with the virus, starting to impact cities, countries, lives, we thought it was really, really important to have. And initially, I think we were it wasn't a plan to kind of have it so regularly, but the first one was really successful because, so the first meeting we actually had was on the 13th of March. So, and at this point, we heard from Maurizio and Namex, and at this point they were just going into like the serious lockdown. I think he said it was around the 10th. But MIX in Milan had already been in lockdown for 3 weeks. So, you know, that's a long time. So we learned a lot from, you know, the Italian IXs, Namex and MIX and JPIX as well, on how they managed and the things that they needed to do. So things like, you know, being in touch with your government, being able to access the data center very early on. You know, these are the things that you need to kind of think about. So that you can prepare for, well, you know, we didn't really know what was coming, but we knew something was potentially coming. So, you know, it was just a lot of discussions, and I think everyone learned a lot. And because we heard very early on from the Italian IXs, I think it gave other IXs some time to start actually thinking about it. Because the first phone call, you know, it was actually quite scary, because, you know, we were in London, we didn't know anything about the lockdown, and hearing, you know, Maurizio was like, stay home, don't go out, and, you know, really serious warnings. And we were like, no, it can't be that bad. And then we heard about police on the street. So you actually, you know, you're not allowed to go out. And it's something that, you know, we've never heard of. You know, you can't leave your house. So the first phone call was really, really quite scary. But then, of course, it did happen. And, you know, we all kind of followed suit. I think we were like a couple of weeks behind Italy. So the phone calls have been really, really helpful, I think. And also, I think it's just a nice way to stay connected to the community. You know, we are quite a small close-knit community, and to see, you know, to see everyone like this, I think it's really nice, and we're all going through the same thing. So it was you know, nice that we could all share war stories, if you like, you know, on things that are happening in our countries, and how all the IXs are dealing with all the different situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of those early calls with the Italian IXPs really hit home for the rest of us. And even if we weren't as far in the pandemic, it made us think about what we could do to prepare. And I think it's interesting that you bring up the human aspects of that as well, Bijal. But Curtis, was there anything, I know that you were on some of those early calls, hearing the situation in Italy. Was there anything that LINX did to prepare for this and to preempt some of the challenges that we've seen in Italy?
So we have a business continuity framework or business continuity planning for a wide range of scenarios. And when we started realizing the pandemic was spreading, we started expanding on the part of that we had to cover this. We started looking at what processes we need to have in place, what decision points we would need to have. We just like everybody else, very, very early on stopped all international travel, and we then started having our senior management team still actually meets every 4 to 8 hours and evaluates what's going on and what new situation has come, both internal staff well-being, staff health, but also, of course, policy or directives by the government. So we started doing all this, and then we gradually moved to home working, and then eventually when we heard that London was shutting down or starting to limit the underground, we actually, before the lockdown, we told staff to start working from home, and then I think it was a few days later the lockdown came into force. But we were, as I said, we were also a preparation we did for this was we tried to pre-provision as much as we could, so we wouldn't have to send engineers to data centers. We changed a lot of the project work. We had a lot of fairly large projects planned for this quarter that would require engineers on site for quite significant time. So that's all those projects are postponed, and you instead look at other projects engineers can do, and you reprioritize your workload. So we had to go through all this. But in those early days when this first started, was to put the pandemic response timing plan to make sure the senior management was actively involved in this, that we looked after staff and had continuous follow-up with them. That was quite important for us early on.
Yeah, thank you. And I think quite a few of the European IXPs, especially after having been alerted very early on of the challenges in Italy, did similar things, put a plan in place, and also pre-provisioned ports and getting ready for an onslaught of port upgrades and new members. I know also that you shared your experience with the JPIX community, so the Asia Pacific Internet Exchange Point community, and I know you were part of that, Takanori-san. Do you want to share your perspectives there?
Yes. End of February, I was in the Australia, Melbourne, in Apricot with Curtis and Nurani. And when I back to Japan, Japan situation is, it's complete confusing. What's going on right now? And the company say, do not go to, business trip anymore, starting end of February to March. And then many our partner, like users who is using IX, and also competitor in Japan, and many major ISP deciding telework, do not go to office. Even government say nothing. We deciding ourselves. So everybody trying to be working at home. That's starting end of February, and do not go to vacation. Going to outside of Tokyo, or maybe I am living in Tokyo anyway. So we say do not go to another area without Tokyo, and also data center also how do you say cannot deciding how to make a law. So many data centers say do not come in without urgent race. That's only saying cannot protecting, do not come to data centers. And also when we enter in data center, they have to check temperatures and contact how much you are temperature you are, and if they are over 30, 75, 37 something, they cannot enter the data center. That situation is starting February to right now. And seriously, after 7th of April, government say states of emergency, so do not go to anywhere. Same like a lockdown, but not so strong one. The situation right now. And other countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, when I talk to some friends, and they say more, how do you say, infectious people is going down right now, so they can go outside and they can go to restaurant, drinking, it's more better than the Japan right now. That's the situation right now.
Yes, interesting. And when I saw you in Melbourne at the end of February, already when I was flying back then via Singapore, they had temperature checks at the airport. So I think there was an experience there that many countries in that region learned from the SARS epidemic, that they can quickly put in place very early on in this pandemic that we haven't necessarily had in Europe. It will be interesting to see how it pans out.
Right. And everybody wearing a mask,
Yes, yes.
Even me, if we're in the office, I have to do that. And company gave me a lot of masks for the staff, because we already think about the pandemic, risk management. So we have a stock in the office. Right. So everybody using a company one.
That's very interesting. Thank you. So, so it's interesting to see about some of the preparations that have taken place and what has happened to date. And I just wanted to move slightly into an area that is obviously where the IXPs have played a role, but where the IXPs one part of the puzzle, and that's there've been a lot of discussions about whether or not the internet can cope with this increased strain on the network, and I've certainly seen a lot of misconceptions out there about whether or not the internet can cope. So that I was actually wondering, for the benefits of those who are not too familiar with how networks manage their traffic, would one of you volunteer, can I put you on the spot, and give a quick explanation of what networks and content providers and operators actually do to manage their traffic? And then also what role do IXPs play in that? But let's start with the first part. Could
I'm happy to go if you want.
Yes, thank you, Curtis.
Well, I mean, on a basic level, first of all regions are different and all countries are different. But on a very high level, the content that we all access, the movies and cat videos, are most of the time delivered from servers inside the access network. So if I'm in the UK, I'm a BT or Sky or Virgin customer, they will have servers from Netflix and Google and Akamai and so on Facebook, or direct links to them. So that's where most of the content comes from, and that we consume, depending on who listens, between 80 and 95% of all internet traffic generated actually stays inside the network and never leaves those networks. So a lot of this traffic comes down to the consumption of how this is handed over, and the scaling of those access networks. So it goes from those content servers through the ISP's network to the end user, and how that handles. And the density and how many of these servers you have varies depending on the country and so on. And what happened, and that's on the very basic level, and then the remaining 10 to 15%, or 5 to 15% of internet traffic either goes across an internet exchange or to a larger carrier to take this traffic to the rest of the world. If it's destined for Asia, for example, from the UK, will hit a traffic with transported over to Asia from some other network. So the ISPs probably sees a rather small amount of traffic from all traffic generated. Again, this varies from region to region. In Europe, this is very much so. If you go to other regions where ISPs very well see much higher proportion of the traffic than they would do in Europe. I think the other thing I just want to point out is also that when we started the epidemic, what we at LINX saw, at least, is there's a lot of attribution to video conferencing driving a lot of the traffic. That's very hard to have an opinion on. I think the most significant thing we have seen is that we used to see a peak around 8 o'clock at night, and now that peak starts at 4 and lasts until 8, which is probably because instead of commuting, people are watching, I don't know, cat videos or whatever they're doing. But clearly the peak has become much longer. Rather than having one peak, is a plateau over several hours of high traffic utilization. And that's a very significant change. I'm not sure if I can attribute we have seen an increase in traffic at LINX. I mean, we have seen for the first weeks of the pandemic, I think we had a new traffic record every day, but that also coincided with game releases and a few other events, so it's very hard to do that. But clearly, overall utilization has gone up, as you see from this prolonged plateau. But that's sort of very shortly how this traffic is handled.
Yeah, that was very insightful. Thank you. And I think I've heard reports from many other IXPs around the world, and certainly in Europe, of similar things, both the traffic increase, but also then the sort of the flattening of the curve, not just people coming home watching Netflix, but people using the internet more continuously throughout the day. Would you say is your experience the same? If we start with Bijal, if you talk about what you've seen reported in Europe.
Yeah, so initially, you know, like Curtis said, you know, many IXPs were seeing around between 30 and 50% increase in traffic, and then over time, that has that's I wouldn't say it's gone back to what it was from what I'm hearing, but it's certainly gone more normal than it had peaked originally. But like you said, I think that, you know, there is a lot more, I mean, we say a lot more usage, and you know, there are things like the video calls, but then, like Curtis mentioned, some of those applications are actually hosted on the access network and not necessarily at the IXP. So it could be, you know, also that, you know, some of the CDNs are actually just moving traffic around depending on where they've got the bandwidth as well. But
right.
But in other places there has been a decrease. I know we keep talking about the increase in traffic, but like I said, so where content is hosted off the IX, then obviously the IX has seen I guess a decrease, and also where IX is are where in countries where, sorry, in countries for my sentence, in countries where the main access for the internet has been, for example, the office, and now people are you know, working from home or being told to stay home, so they've seen a shift in traffic either going to mobile or to the access network, and not necessarily in the at the IX, and that's been seen in Pakistan and Uganda, for example. So
that's a very interesting point. Thank you. And I think it's an interesting point to take with you from this discussion as well. Obviously, the internet exchange points play a very important role, but then there are many other factors that come into play, and the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure in the country, and the traffic management by the network operators and the content providers. So would you say, Maurizio, would you say that your internet exchange points, have you managed the strain, or has your internet exchange point collapsed during this pandemic?
Yeah, it was not so straightforward, but at the end of the day, we coped with that in not so very hard way. I mean, it was not so hard. Although we have a big increase of requests, and this happens, as I said, suddenly. And if you want, I can show some number. But I have, for example, our traffic increased about 30–40%. Here you can see the and this was true for all the internet exchange point in Italy. We are the southest one in Rome, and these three are in the north, in Milan, Padua, and Turin. All of them increase the traffic more or less at much the tenths. And maybe we can also start to see that the decrease of traffic of after the start of phase 2 in May the 4th. But by the way, we had also a roughly 30% increase in capacity. We try to with this providing a port upgrade for free, remote hands for free. I think one of the interesting things is that the internet exchange point was a sort of let me say, as part as others in start to talk with the ISP community to try to solve the problem, to try to show the problem before sometimes they happen, or to try to solve very quickly when they happen. I mean, something like port saturation, more or less. But another very interesting thing is that we have to say that internet works, but work it. Although we were hit by this very strong increase of traffic. And so I think that we have very few problem, I think, inside the internet service provider that they solve in a week or two, and some few problems due to some access in some particular small part of Italy. And at the beginning, maybe they had some problem on access the content, but especially the cloud provider. But we were able to manage this very, very fast. I have to show you what Curtis says, that even in Italy, the peak traffic, well, the shape of the curve moves. We also have this sort of plateau. And also from the national Italian National Research Network, we saw that also the direction of traffic changes. They had 60% more in upload instead of download, because of the remote lessons and from university. Interesting.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's interesting also, it's been pointed out, obviously, like we said, the infrastructure in a country varies, and fiber to the home, for example, varies as well. So when you all of a sudden you shift that traffic to the home instead of the office, things happen, and there are different parts, so to speak, of this network of networks that get affected. And I know in Japan, the broadband penetration is very high, but you're also very early in this pandemic. So maybe you haven't seen big changes. So what is your experience, Takanori-san?
Yes, everybody staying home means, you know, using internet by home, right? So daytime traffic is very high, maybe over 20%, you know, before this coronavirus. So nighttime is okay, same as before, but daytime is very higher. We cannot go out for easy to shop, you know, shopping, right? So order to, you know, AWS or something, and watching AWS, you know, Netflix, and working for the web meeting like a Zoom. So everybody using internet on daytime from the home. So means mobile internet is going to down, but you know, broadband internet service in home is going to up. That situation right now. And the total traffic of JPIX maybe over 50% up before, you know, this situation, including Tokyo Metro, and we have a West Side Japan, we call Osaka. Osaka segment also going higher. It's maybe over 30%, you know, uploading the before.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'll throw in a question because I see there was a question in the Q&A that Economic News today said that Japan's GDP has decreased, gone down 3.4% compared to last year. Is that affecting JPIX?
Well, yes, but you know, how can I say? Yeah, you can say that, but JPI, you know, IX is one of the internet infrastructures. So not everything, you know, we can mark for that. So it means, yeah, maybe, yeah, 30%. I can't answer the easy one, this one. But yeah, as you said, you can say that, yeah, right.
Interesting.
But it's going higher right now.
So, and this is a general question to all of you, and that is if you've seen any new networks or anything, any new developments at the IXP that happened because of the situation or during the situation. And one of the pieces of news we've heard from Italy is actually that Telecom Italia Sparkle connected to the IXPs. Is that something you'd like to share some thoughts on, Maurizio?
Yes, it was not a Telecom Italia Sparkle, it was Telecom Italia Domestic, the incumbent.
Oh, apologies, yes.
No, but just to say that this is one of the good things that happens during this very hard period, very bad period. And the other news is that this was a result of a collaboration between we, Italian Internet Exchange Point, and Telecom Italia. We start to talk about the fact that we need to do our best as part of this of our country to give to provide the best quality, the best network internet quality for our citizens. And this was one of the things that we have to do. And so we proposed to them, we started to talk with them, and they accepted. So they are now appearing in all the Italian Exchange Point, and they started in the first day of April, and they will appear at least until the end of June. Then we will see. But you know, the good news is that we collaborate. We also have something new from a company. Maybe it might be a signal, it might be not. A big company in Italy maybe understand the internet is really important for them, and then they cannot give all these important things just to their consultants, to an external company. So they decided to enter in the exchange point because they want to have control of these important things that is internet, and that if had some problem in this moment nowadays is a big problem for them. So
yes, thank you. I think I'm conscious of the fact that we are getting to the end of our session, and there's so many more interesting perspectives I'd like to hear, but I think one of the big takeaways is actually how important the internet has been to all of us. We couldn't all be doing this, for example, if we didn't have the internet. And I've been amazed to see how quickly so many organizations have just shifted to working online. And there have been some challenges in that, but can you imagine us in this situation 10 years ago or 20 years ago, before the internet was this well developed? I think that's amazing to see what has actually been made possible through the internet. And I had so many more questions for you, but it's possible that we can have this discussion again in a few months when things have shifted. But I also do want to make room for if there are any other questions from the participants, so feel free to share those here. But as we let the participants think about what questions they want to throw at you, I'm going to ask you 2 questions that I'd like you each to give your perspective on. So one is the role of your IXP or IXPs in this pandemic. And then I'll throw you a curveball, and that one is if you could go back in time, so to 2019, and speak to yourself in 2019 and give a piece of advice, what would that be? It could be a professional piece of advice or a personal piece of advice. So anyone who wants to go first?
I think that if I'll start, and I think that we have obviously been, as I said, the IXPs in the UK don't see very much of the end user traffic, but I think we have enabled, or we know from what we've been seeing, is that a lot of enterprises, a lot of enterprise solutions that are now needed for home networking have clearly benefit from having LINX access. We see, a lot of the traffic we have seen increasing is actually for between enterprises and access networks, and also between the various of the video services that are connected to LINX. We also see obviously the increase. So I think helping serving that bandwidth has benefited the UK in that sense. I think that's been quite good as an extra overflow capacity, if nothing else. And I think that's also where we've seen the upgrades. If I would give myself an advice in 2019, it would have haircuts more frequently.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
May I?
Takanori-san, please.
Yes. To companies, we have to more think about seriously remote working, including operation tools. Maybe we have to preparing many port set up before users orders, and also to office work. In Japan, normally everybody coming to office, not working home, right? So we have to more learning how to do that. So before 1 year, maybe we can say more study for that. And also to users, to our IX, ISP and many contents provider, maybe I have to say using more port for emergency. So we have to sell anyway. And also to myself, thinking to more family, to working at home, I think to everybody, this situation never happened, I think, however, hopefully, but nobody knows. So more, we have to thinking more seriously to working at home, and more, very good families, living with families. That's I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great perspective. Maurizio or Bijal, who wants to go?
Please, Bijal.
Oh, okay. So on the On the role of IXPs, so I think, you know, I think we mostly see IXPs as a neutral platform that can, and, you know, and I see their role continuing in bringing the community together, like, you know, like what we're doing now. And also a place where networks can go and, you know, talk to the IXP for support. And, you know, in these meetings that we've been having over the last couple of weeks, you know, we've seen, you know, IXPs kind of going, you know, over and beyond what you'd expect of the normal IXP service and supporting the local community. So I see IXPs doing more of that kind of work now, because you know, the meetings, I think, were very important, and obviously we're not going to be seeing those. So I think that's gonna continue, and I think it's really important to continue to do that, and working with their, you know, members, which is also something, and you know, IXPs do that anyway, but I think we've seen, or at least I've heard of, you know, this happening more and more because of this situation. So IXPs are working really closely with their members, you know, seeing where else they can provide support. And, you know, Maurizio mentioned earlier, they're doing things like remote hands and providing, you know, even going to the data center to do work to avoid too much contact with others. My personal thing on, you know, what would I say? I would have wished I had a better holiday or a bigger holiday, or somewhere on the beach where, you know, I don't know when I'm going to next see a beach. So something like that.
Thank you for that, Vijal. And finally, Maurizio, please.
I think that internet, at least in Italy, became more important after this COVID, and my relatives still don't understand what I'm doing for live, but for what is my work about. But they start to understand that I'm doing something that might be useful for the whole society, and I think this is something that is not going to change after COVID. So I think that even in my country, internet will be seen as something more important than before. And as a general manager of Namex, I would like to have made the more pre-cabling. Yes, this is something very, you know, technical, but yeah, because we have to be prepared for that, and yeah, this is the only things. But as I said, more or less, all the things works. Also, thanks to all the support that we give and receive from the community.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I think that there are some very interesting perspectives shared there, and I think there are a few things that were touched upon, but we didn't get to all the way. But I think some of the things that are worth mentioning is the amount of cooperation that I've seen in this period among different players in the internet space, and very freely and openly sharing information and supporting each other. Yeah, I have personally enjoyed seeing some of the discussions on other forums. I know in Italy, same in the UK and other places, the different network operators have offered to share, they've offered to share information, but also to share equipment or provide hands-on support. I think some of the remote hands services have really proven to work well in some cases. And so I think, well, congratulations to all of us for the first time in our lives having a job that is actually seen as important in not just to other geeks in this industry, but to the wider community. So maybe not as important as some of the nurses and doctors out there, but important in the sense that we're supporting infrastructure. So thank you very much. And I think, unfortunately, this has taken us to the end of our time here. I would have loved to continue this conversation. I've also been sneakily reading some of the comments in the chats as well. It's been interesting to see as well comments about the capacity to the homes doubling and a few other things. And there are definitely some more discussions to be had about that, about identifying weak spots, so to speak, or improvements, but maybe also improvements in the services we provide. If I were to give a piece of my advice to myself in 2019, it would be to not worry so much about all the travel I have in front of me, because that has all come to a halt. And that's actually, personally, while I miss my friends in the community, I'm actually quite enjoying also spending some time with at home and with the family. So maybe this is an opportunity for all of us to do those things we couldn't do when we were doing a normal job before.
Right.
All right. Unless there are any final comments, I'll give you the opportunity to throw in a last-minute curveball or a last-minute comment from anyone.
I just want to say one thing. We are going to have our annual meeting on June the 18th. This will be virtual, so unfortunately, but we are going to have it. So you are all invited. We hope to see you there, although just virtual, but June the 18th. We'll talk about the effect of COVID-19 in our industry and try to figure out what's going on in the future.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to thank all panelists, Bijal, Maurizio, Takanori, Curtis, and thank you to all of you who have tuned in and listened. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I certainly did. It was very interesting to hear all your different perspectives. Like I said, if anyone has any other topic or speaker suggestion, please feel free to get in touch with marketing@linx.com. But also if you want to see follow-up from this discussion or looking at maybe post-COVID-19 or anything that's got nothing to do with COVID, because we might also all be a little bit tired of it and want to focus on anything else, something else. So feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you again, everyone, and hope to see you all soon.